let's take it across to a very special guest this evening who joins us right here on Business Tonight. The founder, chairman and group CEO of Wockhardt, Mr. Habil Khorakiwala, is joining us right here in Mumbai. It's indeed a pleasure to have you on the show late Monday evening, Mr. Khorakiwala. But let's begin with the obvious question. And the question is really emanating from some of the tweets, some of the opinion that has been put out from your peers in Indian industry. On one hand, corporate India wants lower corporate rate, and you've lauded that. But phasing out of exemptions, one would believe, is a logical outcome or something that should happen in sync. Why is that then being opposed?
I think we have to recognize that innovation and R&D exemption is something which has helped corporate India and especially pharmaceutical and biotech industry enormously. Just for example, in 2000 our export was about $2 billion. Today it is $15 billion. And if we have to make the Prime Minister objective of making India successful, innovation and R&D is a very integral part of the whole, and without that the manufacturing sector cannot be competitive globally. Also, we need to develop an ecosystem in India. Today our R&D spend as a country is much lower than China, and leave aside the Western world. And I think we have to build up an ecosystem for our GDP growth and for making us competitive globally. Pharma is one example where it has already become competitive globally, and I think this is something which other sectors will catch up over a period of time. But if government is going to remove R&D weighted deduction, I think it will be a great sad day for India, and it is a retrograde step.
Mr. Khorakiwala, we were talking about how, Ms. Kiran Majumdar-Shaw today, in a very strongly worded tweet, said, and I'm quoting her here, that the Revenue Department is somewhere hijacking the economic agenda. But won't these steps, you believe, perhaps bring about more clarity and predictability in taxation? Or would you, in this case, sort of agree with her share point?
I fully agree with her, because even many developed countries like Canada, Ireland, Germany provide tax incentive for R&D and innovation, because the fundamental of growth and economy and competitiveness in the world is innovation and research. So I do not know whether it is the Revenue Department, but I think this unidirectional simple thinking, I think we need to take care of it, and I think we live in a far complex situation in the world, and I think we need to take various factors into consideration if India has to maintain this kind of growth and competitiveness in global arena.
Mr. Khorakiwala, in your previous answer, you did use the word retrograde, and I think that word was also used by your peer in Lupin, and they said this is indeed a retrograde step. Why are exemptions so crucial to pharma R&D? I understand that, your concerns are perhaps not misplaced. This is going to disincentivize innovation to a great extent, like some of you have said now, but why is it so crucial, and why do you continue to call this a retrograde step? Why does pharma R&D depend so much on exemptions or deductions that come in taxation?
I don't think it is a correct way to look at it, whether pharma R&D depends so much, but it provides a positive impetus. And please recognize that, for example, Wockhardt, we have a research center in India, in UK and in USA. And I think some of us have an option to invest in R&D where it is far more attractive, because our ecosystem is weak. Being Indian, we still try to build an ecosystem here, but if there is no support available from government here, I think probably over a period of time, not us, but I think the whole industry's approach would be that ultimately you have to be competitive. And some of the disadvantages we have in India operating, this kind of weighted deduction balances out that.
That's a fair point indeed, and you rightly mentioned that you have a research center both in India and UK. My follow-up question is that how do the two really compare in terms of the enabling environment around it? I mean, let's just put tax deductions or tax exemptions out that you believe do make up for the shortcomings in India. That's question number one. And question number two, of course, is that if this were to happen and looks like the government is in a mood to go ahead with this one, though of course it's still out for consultation, what sort of a hit would you expect on Wockhardt in terms of your revenues, your top line?
I don't think it will have any impact in a short-term time, but I think it is a trend. And I think we are not only discussing from a company or an industry, but I think from looking from a point of view of the country as a whole. How do you make India competitive and encourage manufacturing and innovation? It is not only Indian companies who will invest, but if you have an enabling environment, if you have these advantages, I think the international companies will come and do innovation, to establish research center in India. They are doing in a big way in China today. And I think this is an opportunity available to India because there are a lot of other advantages. And if correct momentum is available and those kind of policies are there, and I think we need an ecosystem for innovation and research. And this is giving a signal that it doesn't matter. And I think that signal is something one should be worried about.
So then, in a sense, you would tend to agree, Mr. Khorakiwala, with your peers that, it's tax incentives that will perhaps accelerate and push forward some of the government's key and pet themes like Make in India and innovation. And if we were to sort of pull the plug on some of these exemptions, then the environment wouldn't quite be conducive for it.
So absolutely, there is no question about that. Because I think when government wants a policy of Make in India, it has to have an alignment and comprehensiveness. Because if you have only one idea, okay, we want to make in India, I think you need several aspects of policies in place. In a corporate tax today is 30%, want to bring it down to 25%, that's fine. But I think if you look at a total tax revenue issue, I think R&D is still not a very major factor as far as the government revenue is concerned. And it is an assumption that if you withdraw the R&D weighted deduction, the revenue will increase. I think it is misplaced.
Mr. Khorakiwala, if I may just broad-base this discussion a little, and like you rightly pointed out, saying the signal could perhaps be a little worrying out of India, could perhaps push R&D and IP out of our borders and onto foreign shores. But if I were to ask you a more big picture question, we talk about development economics and we talk about, the state really doing a lot in terms of the developmental economics. Where do they get the revenue from? If they continue with these exemptions, if they continue with the deductions, and, it's not as if the economy has picked up and we are in the pink of health, where does the finance minister and his entire establishment get those coffers to be filled from?
No, I don't want to be in the shoes of the finance minister, but I think one of the responsibility finance minister and government has is to grow the economy and make India competitive. So these are balancing issues and challenges available, and you have to choose what would be overall good for India. But simply saying that uniform tax and areas which stimulates growth, areas which gives the competitive advantage to India, and you withdraw it and leave it to the rest of it, I don't think India at this level and stage of development, that's the kind of policy we should have. And it is retrograde because we are not discussing introducing something new. It is something already there. And as I said, in our industry, export has grown something like 5 to 7 times in the last 10 to 15 years. And these are very strong numbers, and one should take cognizance of that. If you withdraw that amount of risk you are taking in terms of the economy, in terms of the growth, in terms of exports.
Mr. Khorakiwala, one of the reasons why I think you and your peers are opposing this is because this is going to have an immediate impact on your expenditure on R&D. But a few quick last questions before we let you go. I mean, your peers from Lupin were also here a short while back, and they said that this is really going to disincentivize R&D, and they also said that overseas there are many grants that make up for the shortfalls. In India, the grants are fewer, the exemptions, of course, if they go, will disincentivize it. My question to you is more big picture. As a member of corporate India who deals with these complex web of taxation that exists in India, would you rather not have a clear regime, more clarity? Here's my corporate tax that's going to be lowered to 25%, and that entire web of exemptions and deductions is going to be cleared out. Isn't that a logical way to also look at things?
I can give you example, you know, look at countries like Canada or Ireland or other countries. They are developed countries. They have a strong competitive economy, and still they provide a massive incentive for research and investment in those countries. And that is how you attract investment, that is how you create jobs, this is how you assimilate new science, knowledge and technologies into your ecosystem. And India is a very early stage of development, and I think we have a long way to go to really become a place where people like to come and work and do things. So I agree with you that there are exemptions, but one has to really make a choice what exemption you want to keep and what exemption you don't want to keep. But to take a fairly simplistic view, we will remove all the exemption and lower the tax, I don't think that may be very appropriate policy for us.
Right, sir. So then the other way to sort of argue that is that other parts of the globe do have exemptions and grants, but they also have much higher tax rates. Whereas here in our country, the attempt really being made is to lower rates. So in that sense, isn't that a welcome move?
I don't know whether a 30% tax is really a lower rate of tax. Many of the countries which are developing or early stage of development have even lower tax than us. So we are not very low tax countries, even though we are not high tax countries. So I think one cannot get a growth of 7%, 8% and 9% GDP growth. And what we are discussing is really very small taxation base in terms of number of people, number of corporate, and you go on taxing them or don't provide them the proper incentive for growth and development, it's going to affect our growth to some extent. I would agree 2 to 5% reduction of income tax is always welcome, but it is better to have a directed benefit available which has a greater impetus of economic growth and job creations.
Mr. Khorakiwala, tax is always a tricky issue and the discussion can just go on for a lot longer, but we compress for time here. We really appreciate you taking time out this evening and being with us on ET Now, India's #1 business news channel. Thanks very much, sir, for being with us.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNow Live. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.